Hey y'all, my name is Max. I'm an instructor at Youth Code Jam, and we're back with a Spurs Give Thanksgiving coding camp. So the first thing you'll want to do is head on over to spursgive.org/coding, and all of the setup steps that you'll need to get started today will be posted on that website, and it looks kind of like this, on what you see on my screen right now. And that will eventually direct you towards an activity sheet or this video. Whichever way you prefer to code is fine. If you want to watch the video and follow along with the PDF activity sheet. So the first thing the activity sheet does will take you to Scratch, which is the visual programming language that we'll be using today. This is what the Scratch homepage looks like if you are not signed in. If you do not have an account, it's a good idea if you want to submit this project to us to join. So you can click on join here or join Scratch up in the top, and that'll take you through a series of questions. Now, before you do this, make sure that you have the permission or the assistance of a trusted adult. That's really important before you sign up for any internet accounts. So once you're here, I do recommend signing in, but whether you are or you aren't signed in, you can go up to the top and press the Create button. And this will start a new project. If you are not signed in, you'll see this little tutorial. You can close out of that. And every Scratch project, every new Scratch project will start out with this Scratch cat. And we're going to go ahead and delete that for today, at least for right now. And the next thing we'll want to get set up is our backdrop. So we need a setting for today's project. So what we'll be doing in today's project is making a little garden of sorts where we can grow some things that we are all grateful for. So I'm going to choose a backdrop by going all the way in the bottom right. There's an icon of a picture of some mountains. You'll click on that when it turns green, and that'll take you to the library. So I'm going to choose the one that says garden, just because that's sort of what we're making. You can choose any one that you want, but we are going to be making some seeds in a little bit. So I think it's pretty appropriate to put them in a garden. But again, feel free to choose any backdrop that you want. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a sprite. And right next to where we added our backdrop, right to the left of that, there should be a little icon of a cat with a plus on it. Go ahead and click on that when it turns green. And then you can choose a sprite. And I want you to choose something that you're grateful for. So in our example, I'm going to use the earth, because that's something that I'm personally grateful for, but I feel like it's something that everybody can be a little bit grateful for. So it doesn't matter where it goes on your stage right now. You can put it anywhere. Make sure that it's something that you can explain why you feel grateful for. So if you don't see anything in the library that you want to choose, there's also an option to paint your own sprite. And we'll be doing a little bit of this in a minute. But I figured it would be a little bit easier if you want to choose a sprite first, and then we're going to paint a costume next. So the way we can paint a costume for this sprite is up in the left, there's some tabs. The middle one says costumes. Go ahead and click on that one, and that'll take you to this paint editor where we can either edit this costume or we can add a new costume. And instead of clicking on the cat when it turns green to choose a costume, this time we're going to paint a costume. So it's a good idea to name your costume. And what we're going to be making here is a seed. So I'm going to type the word seed into the costume name up here in the properties. And then what we'll do is we'll grab a circle tool. You can do this in any way that you want to draw a seed. I'm going to do it with the circle tool first. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to have sort of a brown color for my seed. And I'm just going to make a circle at first, and then we'll change it a little bit. I'm also going to make sure that it's locked into the center here because that makes it a little bit easier to work with when you're coding it. I'm also going to change the color of the outline a little bit. You can use this dropper here to grab a color, and then I'm just going to make it slightly darker than the other color that we used to have an outline there. The next thing that I'm going to do is shape this a little bit more into a seed shape. So I'm going to grab this tool over here on the left that looks like a mouse pointing at a little dot. And then I'm going to select the circle, and you can see there's some points that we can manipulate on our circle now. And all I'm going to do is bring this first one, this top one, up a little bit and make it into kind of like a seed shape. Awesome. Then I'm going to add a little bit of sprouting leaves. And the way we can do that is by adding a couple more circles. So I'm going to change the color again to like a green for the leaf. And I'll go ahead and make my shape first. It doesn't really matter where it goes right now. But I want to make sure I have this selected, and then I'm going to change the color of the outline the same way that I did previously. Make it a little bit darker. And then we can reshape this one into a seed too. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on this dot again. And what I'm going to do here is you can see up in the properties, we can change whether one of the points on our shape is curved or pointed. I'm going to make this pointed and then do the same thing with the bottom one. And then we can have like a leaf shape. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then what we can do is grab the mouse pointer, just the regular mouse pointer, to select it, and use these little arrows at the bottom here to rotate. And then I'll put it on top like this. And I think I'm going to add another leaf. And instead of drawing a new one, what I'm going to do is select the current leaf and click on copy. And then I'm going to paste it. And this will make another copy of the same thing. I'm going to flip this one horizontally and rotate it a little bit. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller than the other one. And then put it coming out of the top like that. And now we have a seed, which is awesome. So we can select this one. Whichever one you select will show up on your stage, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to change some of that in code. So awesome, we have a seed. The next thing we need to create is we're going to do some more painting, and we're going to create our own sprite for water so that we can water our seed. So the way we can do that is going to that same cat icon, but instead this time of choosing the library, choosing the sprite from the library, we're going to select the paint option again, like we did for our costume. But this time it'll be for a whole new sprite. And again, I'm going to name my sprite. So I'm going to call this water. Something that makes sense. And we're going to do kind of the same thing that we did before. Let me zoom in a little bit. But I'm going to make some small little water droplets. So I'm going to get a circle again. And this time we're going to need some blue. And I'm just going to draw a little circle here and change the color of the outline again, the same way that we did before. And then I'm going to grab this mouse that's pointing towards the little point tool. And so I can manipulate some of these points again. And I'm going to make the top one pointed. Luckily, a raindrop is kind of the same shape. I'm not a very good artist, but a raindrop is kind of the same shape as the other things that we made. So that looks like a little raindrop. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to grab this pointer, just the plain pointer again, and drag it from the corner to make it a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to add a little bit smaller, and maybe what I'll do is reduce the thickness of the outline. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple more of these in the same way that we did with the leaves on the seed. I'm going to copy it and then paste it, and we'll have another identical raindrop or water drop. And then we can do that again, and you don't need to copy the second time, you can just paste again. And I'll put them in a little formation, and then you can see them on the screen here, and that's kind of cool. So awesome, we've made 2 sprites already. Well, 1 costume for a sprite and 1 sprite. Now what we can do is add some code. So the first thing that we're going to code is this water. We want to make sure we can water our seed. So what we'll do is go up in the top left where you selected the costumes tab. We're going to go back over to the code view. And the first piece of code that we'll need is a green flag event. So this is pretty important. These events are pretty important for starting a lot of things when your program runs. So it's like the beginning of your whole Scratch project. And the first thing that we're going to do with this sprite when the project starts is we're going to hide this, this sprite. So don't worry, we'll show it again. But the first thing that we want to do is hide it. So now when I click the green flag, it disappears. You can always, in the properties down here, hide or show. But we want to start off our project with this sprite hidden. And I'll show you why in a little bit. So the next block we'll need is going to be from control. So you'll notice that these are kind of color coded. So the last one that we used to hide is a purple block, and it's in the looks palette over here on the left. So the next block that we need is a forever block, and we can find that in the control one. It's the lighter orange. And we'll attach that right underneath the hide block. And inside of this forever block, we are going to choose a motion block. So go up to the blue category or palette here. We're going to get a block that says go to, and then by default, it'll say random position, but we want to change this drop down value to mouse pointer. So we have this invisible sprite now that's always traveling next to our mouse pointer, but we cannot see it. What you can see though is if you run your program, you can see that the properties change, the position properties change when I move my mouse because the sprite is moving. We just can't see it yet. The next block that you want is going to be a control block again, and this is going to be an if-then block. Be careful here. There's 2 blocks that are very similar. There's an if-then block, and then there's an if-then-else block. We just want the one that says if-then. And this has a little space in it. So this block is kind of like asking a question to the computer. And we're going to put a block inside of this space from the sensing palette over here. It's the lighter blue one. And we're going to grab a block that says mouse down. And that'll fit right in there. It's the same shape, kind of. So that'll fit right in there. And this is like asking the question continuously as our program is running, because this is in a forever block. Is the mouse being clicked? So your program will be asking that over and over and over again, many times a second, to check to see if the mouse is clicked. And if it is, we want to do something. So the thing that we want to do is create a clone. And you can find a block to do that in control. It's way at the bottom of control. And we want the block that says create clone of myself. And you can leave this drop-down value, the default myself. That's fine if you want to leave that as myself. And then the next thing that we'll do is we will put a very short amount of time. And it's tricky because we've got some nested blocks here. So you want to make sure that these 2 blocks go within the if-then statement. But we want to change this from 1 second to actually 0 seconds. Now it seems kind of silly to wait for 0 seconds because it seems that like that would do nothing, but it actually will cause the program to wait the very shortest amount of time that it can. It'll be less than 1 second. Awesome. So that part is done, but still kind of nothing happens. Even if we click, we're technically creating clones, but we just can't see them because we still haven't shown our sprite yet. So the next thing that we'll do is we'll decide what happens with the clones when they get created. And way at the bottom in control again, there is a hat block, and it says when I start as a clone on it. And this is the next block that we need. And you can put this anywhere on your coding space. Anytime you see one of these hat blocks, you can put them anywhere, and it doesn't matter where you put them. So when I start as a clone, the first thing that we're going to do is show. And the next thing that we're going to do, we want our water to kind of fall down so that we can water our seeds. So we're going to get a block that says, it's in control, and it says repeat until. So this one will repeat code until something else happens. And the thing that we want to stop the code on is if the water sprites, the clones, touch our seed, or if they touch the edge down here at the bottom. So the first block that we'll need is an OR block, and you can find that in the operators. These blocks are green, and the OR block is going to be that kind of hexagon shape, and this will fit right in there. And then we're going to actually put 2 more blocks within this OR block. So the blocks that we're going to put in there are sensing blocks, and they start with the word touching, and then there's a drop down. So we don't want to get the one that says touching color. We're going to get the one that says touching mouse pointer by default. And this will make the blocks kind of long. And it's a little bit tricky, but you can see when I hover my block over the place where I want it to go, there's kind of like 2 places where it can go. So if the whole OR block is highlighted, then it will replace that block like that. But if just the one space within the OR block is highlighted, then it will put it where we want it to go. So now we have repeat until touching mouse pointer. We want to change this mouse pointer, the first one to edge, and then the second one that we get, we want to change this to, well, in my case it's earth, but for you it'll be whatever you chose to be grateful for. That sprite that you made first. The next thing that we want to do is we want to put some code in here. So what do we want to repeat until it's touching either the seed or the bottom? Well, we wanted it to move down, right? So we're going to go to motion, and we're going to grab a block that says change Y by. So this one is a little tricky. Again, there's another block that says set Y to right underneath it. Be sure that you're grabbing the one that says change Y by. They look very similar. And inside of this block, there's a value, and we're going to change this value. You don't actually need to delete the whole thing, but we're just going to put a minus or a negative sign in front of it, and that'll take away values, and essentially what that'll do is make it go down. Now, the last thing that we need for this chunk of code is what do we do once it hits the seed or the bottom? Well, we can actually just delete that sprite. So again, in control, well, we'll delete the clone, not the whole sprite. So you'll need a block that says delete this clone. And this one, you'll notice you can't attach any code to the bottom of this one. It looks a little bit different than the other blocks of code. So it'll be right next to the other clone blocks that you used. So all together, it looks like this. And let's test it out. If we click the green flag, and now when we click anywhere on our screen, the water will fall. You can even hold down the mouse and it'll create more water, it goes away if it gets to the bottom of the screen, or if it hits the seed here. Awesome. So now what we need to do is add some code to our seed and whatever it's growing into. The first thing you'll want to do is make sure that you have the seed sprite selected. In Scratch, each sprite has its own code. So when you select the sprite with the seed costume on it, it may look like all your code went away, but it's still there if you click back over to sprite 1 or the sprite that you created. I'm going to rename this to water. I think we just named the costume earlier. Okay, so we've selected the very first sprite that we selected from the library and then made the costume for. The first block that we're going to need, again, is going to be the green flag block. So we'll get a green flag block. I'll zoom in so you can see it. And the first thing that we want to make sure is that when we press the green flag, we start out as the correct costume, right? Because we have two different costumes, and we're going to switch between those costumes. So there's a block in looks that says switch costume to. And by default, it should say seed already, but if it doesn't, make sure that you go ahead and change it to whatever you named your seed costume. The next block that we'll need is a forever block. So that's going to be in control again, and we'll attach that right underneath. After that, we're going to nest another block inside of this, an if-then block, and that's right underneath the forever block in control, but we want to make sure that we put this inside of the forever block. Again, this is kind of like asking the computer a question, and since it's in a forever block, we'll be asking continuously. So the question that we want to ask this sprite is kind of like, are you touching the water? Because we want to change this sprite into whatever we're grateful for, that other costume, when it touches the water. So we're going to get that same sensing block, the one that says touching, and by default, again, it'll say mouse pointer, and we want to change that value in the dropdown to water. And then we'll place it into the if-then block. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to switch the costume again. So we'll get another one of these switch costume blocks. And this time we want to switch it to, for me, it'll be Earth. For you, it's going to be whatever you selected as your first costume, whatever you're grateful for. Cool. So now what we can do, well, we can actually test this out real quick if we want to press the green flag. And it works. So whenever we water our seed, it will turn into whatever we're grateful for. Pretty cool. But we still have some more code to write. So I'm going to add a sound to this so that we can really see that happening. So in the sound palette over here on the left, there's some different blocks. We want to get the block that says start sound. You don't want the block that says play sound until done. You want to get the block that says start sound. Again, there's some blocks that are really similar, but do different things. And this one, I'm just going to leave it as pop. If you want to add more sounds to your project, there's a sounds tab, and you can add a sound from the library here, just like you did with a costume for a sprite, or you can with a costume for a sprite. We painted ours. You can also record your own sound if you want, just like we made our own costume. And then whatever sounds you add here will show up in this little drop down. You can also record directly from here, but I'm just going to use the pop because I think it actually makes sense. So now I hear a pop. You may not be able to hear a pop. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the final piece of code, which is we're going to say why this, whatever you chose, why you're grateful for that. So in looks, in the looks palette, which is the darker purple over here, we're going to grab a block that says say hello for 2 seconds. And we're actually going to change the value here. So I'm going to write, I'm grateful for the earth because it's my home. And it doesn't have to be a long message, but just say why you're grateful for whatever you chose. And then I'm going to leave mine up for 5 seconds, but you can change this number to whatever you want to be here. And we'll test it out one more time to see if everything works. So we'll press the green flag and it changes into the earth and it says, I'm grateful for the earth. Well, we can see it again because it's my home. Awesome. So you're pretty much done at this point, but if you check out the activity sheet that's on the spursgive.org/coding website, there's some extra coding that you can do. So there's some adventure modes. The first one is going to be to grow more gratefulness. So how many of these can you make? You can make more of these if you want to by adding another costume and doing it in the same way that we did, where you add a sprite, then paint a costume, and you can even copy over that seed costume if you want to. If you click on costumes and then go to the seed, you can actually select your seed and then click copy and then paste it into a new sprite. Like if I did it over here on the water, for example, I can click paste and that'll click there. We don't want that there though. So yeah, we don't want a seed when we click. We just want the water. But that's one of the adventure modes that you can do. Another idea is to add some more sounds to your project or make it into a game. There's a lot of different ways that you can make this into a game. But I think that the games are a little bit more challenging. So I would try the first 2 adventure modes, and then if you do that, then try making it into a game after that. One of the last things that you can do is once you're satisfied with your project, you can actually submit it to us. So the way that you'll do this is you'll go to a studio and there will be a document again on this website on spursgive.org/coding that will help you submit your project, but you'll be submitting it to a studio on Scratch. So in order to do that, you will have to join Scratch. So I'll show you what that looks like really quick. So this is what our studio looks like. There will be hopefully more projects in it once you've finished coding. But the way you'll do this is you'll have to be logged in up here, so you'll see your username. Then you'll go to the studio and click on Add Projects. And then a list of any projects that you've shared will come up here. So you want to make sure that you've pressed the big orange share button that you see at the top of the screen when you're in your project. And again, there's a guide on how to do this that'll be posted on the spursgive.org/coding website here. Thanks for coding with me. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope to see some really awesome projects and some really cool things that you're all grateful for.